Hello friends, it's me, and today Hurricane Survival 101 with the food tiers. Let's check out food theory. This food can save your life during a hurricane. From the food tiers. Together, let's go. Let's start.
How should you eat your fridge? No, that's not the setup for a joke. If your fridge isn't running, what should you eat and in what order should you eat it all in to avoid as much spoilage as possible? Well, it all comes down to what foods you're choosing to stock up on if you're expecting to lose power. And let me tell you, you're probably choosing wrong.
Food theory.
Hello Internet, welcome to Food Theory, the show that's always prepared. And thank goodness for that, because you may remember all the way back in the first episode of Food Theory on the Road that I said we'd be getting to Florida and working with a special guest that I've been looking forward to meeting for a long time. Well,
Hello Internet, welcome to Food Theory.
Mother Nature thought I was talking about her, and instead of our original collab that we had planned, we got hit with a hurricane. In all seriousness, though, don't worry, we'll still get to do the original episode. But with the uncertainty of how much damage the hurricane would do in our area, we decided the responsible thing to do would be to reschedule for another time. And honestly, it's been so amazing seeing all of you leaving comments worried about my safety. It means so much to have such a great community, and in a time where stress was at an all-time high, all of you reaching out kept me sane, so thank you. As for the original episode, it's coming, so make sure you click the subscribe button so you can be there when it does. But in the meantime, not gonna lie, it was a pretty stressful time. I had to scramble to find another topic to talk about and scramble to get all the food I needed to weather the storm. But when I got to the supermarket and I saw the empty shelves, I realized the theory was right in front of me the whole time. People were doing it all wrong. Not only were they reaching for the wrong things, but that would lead them to having the least optimal eating order if and when the power went out. It got me thinking, how and in what order should you eat the contents of your refrigerator if you lose power? Regardless of whether it's from a hurricane or a raccoon chewing on your power lines like the cartoonish villains they are. Well, to get there,
Case in point, losing power means your fridge does not work anymore. This sort of things is... That means the food inside your refrigerator will no longer be stored in cool temperature. It will start to spoil fast, very fast.
First, we have to solve the problem that starts all the way back at the grocery store. What you're buying to begin with is probably wrong. Now, let's get a couple of things out of the way. For this, we're going to be focusing on what should go in your refrigerator and freezer. After all, you can stock up on all things canned and be good for years. We're not doomsday prepping for the world of fallout here, though. Just for the week or so, you might be out of power. When you look at some of the most commonly bought items before a storm,
He makes a very good point. When hurricane does strike, when Mother Nature, like natural disaster does strike, it's not like 1 or 2 days, it's not like 1, 2, 3 days sort of things. He mentions 1 week or so. Let's just say 2 weeks, alright? That means you have to survive 14 days with your fridge. You survive, your wife survive, your family members survive. Let's say you really have to survive, like pure instinctual survival. Yeah.
milk and bread are usually among the top choices. Some even call them French toast warnings before storms because of the milk, bread, and eggs suddenly disappearing. But when you think about it, it doesn't really make any sense. All three of those are some of the first things to go bad if you don't have power, so are people just making a bunch of French toast when natural disasters strike? Honestly, the answer might as well be yes, because the absolute lack of logic is something psychologists have even looked into. A working theory is that it dates back to the blizzard of 1978 in New England, where people were stuck inside for days without the fundamental ingredients. So they made sure to never let history repeat itself and the word spread. Another theory...
And when he mentioned history, he's talking about 50 years ago. Okay, it's not 50 years ago, it's more like 46 years ago, 1978. Yeah, 48 years ago. Well, 50 years seems about right. Aga there lah, aga there. Half a century.
Suggests that it's a psychological coping mechanism, that by buying perishables, we subconsciously convince ourselves the power will return before they go bad. Sounds kinda sus if you ask me. And it's still...
But that's the thing, if you're gonna buy milk, if you're gonna buy bread, if you're gonna buy eggs, try to consume them fast, especially milk, unrefrigerated milk. Try to consume them fast. Like, today I bought it, room temperature. Gosh, I need to finish this within today, tomorrow, or tomorrow. Yeah, it'll be gone.
leads back to something not adding up, since being stuck inside for days, and presumably without power, means that even if you had lined the walls of your house with cartons of milk and eggs, they'd most likely spoil before you could consume them. Obviously, this isn't to say that you can't use those ingredients as building blocks for other things that can last longer than the sum of its parts, but you'd most likely have most of it go bad, unless part of your storm party plans inexplicably involved a milk and egg chugathon. Look, I'm not judging, but yeah, I'm judging. So if the panic buyers are wrong about what they dive for in the grocery stores, what is right? Again, getting the things that have indefinite shelf lives is always good. We're talking your rice, beans, pastas, and don't forget the flour. But we want to stock up our fridges and freezers. And if you want...
Fun fact, do you know that biscuits from like World War One, World War Two, those days in which military biscuits are still quite edible? Granted, it's not tasty, it's not delicious, it tastes bad, but it's edible.
To avoid having to deal with the moral debate of fighting a preteen over some milk, there are 5 things that usually go overlooked that are really everything you need. At the top of that list, butter. Butter can last for months if stored properly. And before you ask, yeah, storing it in a dark fridge counts as properly. It's just one of those things that's really versatile. You can slather it on some toast, use it to cook if you have a gas stove, or if you're all electric, even make some no-bake desserts. Next up, sorry to all you lactose intolerant theorists out there, cheese. Not just any cheese though. Specifically hard cheeses. See, hard cheeses like Gouda, cheddar, or Parmigiano Reggiano are low in moisture, meaning bacteria has a harder time growing in them than, say, cream cheese or mozzarella. They can last for months if they're unopened, but the big advantage is that even when you do open them, they can last for up to a month, if you don't eat it all first. Third item on the shopping list.
Okay, so when talking about cheese, well, lactose intolerance is a bit kind of difficult because it differs from person to person. It's not like, alright, you're lactose intolerant, you cannot eat cheese. People with lactose intolerance have different levels of tolerancy level. So yeah, if your tolerance, let's say if I have a high level of lactose tolerance and I have a low level of lactose tolerance, we can still technically consume cheese, but different amounts.
Fruits. This one is a double whammy because it's 2 particular fruits. Apples
Because, in the toilet it's gonna be...
and lemons. Apples have the longest fridge life of most common fruits, lasting anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months. They're full of nutrients, keep the doctor away, kinda, and are mostly water, meaning they can help out with hydration. Lemons have vitamin C like apples, but also last for a long time in the fridge and do just fine at room temperature when your fridge inevitably warms back up. The last item that'll go in the fridge is a pretty obvious one, but plays the most important role: water. It's not a shocker, and it is one of the items that goes first, so even though it's last on this list, it should be the first thing you go by. Aside from the obvious need humans have for water to do the whole being alive thing, water bottles keep your fridge cold when the power goes out. And bear with me here because we're about to get all scientific up in this fridge. I'm so sorry for that. The reason is that they drastically increase the thermal mass inside the fridge. Basically, thermal mass is the ability of something to absorb and store energy. Water is phenomenal at that. In fact, it's one of the best liquids, period. See, water has a high specific heat capacity, meaning it takes a lot of energy to heat it up or cool it down. So if you fill your fridge with water and give it plenty of time to cool before your power goes out, when it does, it'll take a lot of energy for it to warm back up. Think about how long it takes for a pot of water to finally boil over high heat. Now, think about how long it would take for it to warm up if it's cold and there's no heat source other than a tiny bit of room temperature air that leaks inside. So essentially,
That's a very good point. An additional few hours is life-saving.
it increases the
beneficial.
total amount of energy it'll take for the entire fridge to warm up since so much cold is stored inside them. Increasing thermal mass is the overall goal here, which is why apples, lemons, and cheeses are on this list as well, since they all have high thermal mass, meaning they all help in keeping your fridge cool long after your power goes out and gives you some wiggle room to buy your usual items as well, if you can find them. So we filled our fridge to the brim with cheeses, water, fruits, and butter. Everything's cooled down as much as it needs to, and the power goes out. What next? How do you eat your fridge in the most efficient way? Especially because every time you open your fridge, you lose some of that precious cold your high thermal mass foods have stored up. In fact, you lose around 30% of the cold air every time you open the door, meaning you're racing against the clock. The US Food and Drug Administration suggests keeping your fridge between 35 and 38 degrees Fahrenheit. And within that range, if the power goes out, they also say that things will stay cold for about 4 hours. But there's a little nuance there. Cold in this case means at or below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, since the type of bad bacteria that likes to grow on food tends to multiply between temperatures of 40 and 140 degrees. After those 4 hours, you have some time before the food warms up and the threat of bacteria sets in. So the first time you open your fridge should be at the 5-hour mark. Oddly specific, but once the 4 hours of cold have gone, the harmful bacteria can get to dangerous levels after multiplying for about 2 hours, meaning you'll want to bust into your fridge a while before that to get rid of the things that won't last. Yes, this does mean your eggs and milk. Let the chugathon commence! This also means any meat you made the mistake of buying and shredded cheese, or else they'll have more mold than I'm not touching that one. No. Oh, moving on. You should get your fill here for the day, and that should leave you with pretty much just the
comment down below if you actually know what he want to say. This one.
Also means any meat you made the mistake of buying and shredded cheese, or else they'll have more mold than I'm not touching that one. No. Oh, moving on. You should get your fill here for the day, and that should leave you with pretty much just the items on our original list left. Of those 4, the next thing to go is butter. Once the fridge starts to heat up closer to room temperature, butter only has a few days before it can start going bad. Don't go chomping on the stick of butter, but it might be a good idea to start being generous with it on your toast. That leaves us with apples, lemons, and water. Not exactly 3 square meals, and we're only 2 days in, but this is where our secret ingredient kicks in. At the top of the episode, I mentioned you need to get 5 things, but in our fridge, we've only focused on 4. That's because the 5th item should completely fill up your freezer: fish. See, while people are scrambling for milk and eggs, you should be dashing to the frozen aisle to stock up on fish. It's usually overlooked on lists of things to buy before storms, and at first glance, it makes sense because it's hard to cook any sort of protein if you don't have power. Except there's more than one way to cook a fish. By the time your diet has whittled down to butter and bread with a side of apple, your fish in the freezer will likely start to warm up and thaw. I mean, you could absolutely take out a couple of fillets and put them in the fridge to thaw out before you need to subsist solely on butter, but hey, you do you. In any case, fish is relatively unique as a protein because you don't need heat to cook it. All you need is the lemon that we've stuffed in the fridge. If you've ever had ceviche, you know what I'm talking about. It's raw fish that's been cooked with citrus. Like I painfully learned in the sour food episode with Josh, lemons have a very low pH level, and the citric acid denatures the proteins in the fish a lot like how heat does. It gets firmer, more opaque, and gets rid of whatever germs may have survived the freezing. I mentioned fish being unique in this because the proteins in beef, for example, are tougher and not as porous as those in fish. So the citric acid from the lemon would tenderize it, but it wouldn't fully denature the proteins enough to cook it. And yes, to those of you commenting that it's not actually cooked, you're not wrong, but the protein denaturation in fish is similar to the effect that cooking it with heat has, which is why ceviche is a generally safe dish to have and is considered cooked. So there you have it. If you're
did you know that? I did not know that. That means you do not need fire, you do not need heat to cook fish. Huh. I thought you need to like smoke it prior a few days before, so that it'll be like bacon, so that it'll be like snack, like finger food.
getting ready for a storm, don't bother with the milk and eggs. Make sure you stock up on water, apples, and butter. But most important,
technically speaking, you can have the milk and egg, but you have to consume it. You need to meat within the first 1 or 2 days. Yeah, 3 days onwards, you want to drink. Do you seriously want to drink unrefrigerated milk outside that have been there for 3 days? How desperate are you?
importantly, dash to the lemons and frozen fish so that you can outlast the outage by chowing down on some ceviche while everyone else is throwing out their rotten milk. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Bon appetit. Hey, if you like this and want to see more episodes about grocery stores, make sure to click the link on the screen now. And as always, I'll see you next week.
Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you in my next video. Subscribe. Thank you. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory! Bon appetit! And I hope to see you all in my next video. Thank you so much! Subscribe! Subscribe!